Rojas and Coach John Berry with us. We're back for a weekly Chatham NC Sports Roundup every Wednesday around noontime. Every once in a while, we have to change it up. But hey, here's the agenda of what we're going to be touching on. Asheebo's going to go through some high school wrestling and indoor track news. Then we're going to get into the high school basketball roundup, which includes John Berry. Asheebo's going to start that off with the power rankings, going through scores. We're also going to mention Northwood's going to Oregon for the Capital City Invitational. And then, as we usually do, is we'll finish up with, hey, what stories does Asheebo have in the Chatham News and Record newspaper that came out today? So let me get off of there. And what we're going to do is there's me. They keep on moving me around. I'm here. Asheebo's there. Coach Berry's even over further. So I'm going to put Coach Berry on the side for right now because we'll get to him when we're talking basketball. But Asheebo, let's rock and roll with wrestling and track. What's going on with those?
Starting for wrestling last week, we had a tri meet with Bartlett Yancey, Graham, and Northwood. And Northwood in that one, they beat Bartlett Yancey 54-30 and Graham 46-25. But then we also had another tri meet with three Chatham County schools. We had Seaforth hosting Jordan Matthews and Chatham Central. Seaforth was dominant in that tri meet, beating Jordan Matthews 83-0, and they beat Chatham Central 81-0. And then Jordan Matthews, they got their first dual win of the season over Chatham Central 42-30, and that was also their head coach's Jimmy Long's first win as a varsity head coach. So congrats to Coach Long on the win on that one. And then some of the invitationals. On Saturday, we had the Nick Sigori Invitational with Northwood. In that one, they had a couple of first and second place finishers. Here we got Sunday Ooh won first place for the 120-pound weight class. Mason Powell won first for the heavyweights. And then they had a couple of second and third place finishers as well. And then Seaforth was in the Wolverine Challenge on that same day, and they finished second out of 24 teams. They had Gabe Rogers finish first for the 106-pound weight class. Josh Miller finished first for 120. Lane Armstrong first for 126. And Harrison Compton first for 190. And Ethan Kubal was also first for 215. So a lot of first-place finishes there for Seaforth. And then Kara Rosenmarkle, the Seaforth girls wrestler, she won first place for the girls 152-pound weight class at the same Wolverine Challenge. And then we also had another duel for Chatham Central against Northmore. It was at Northmore, and they lost all 5 of their duels to that one. And Jordan Matthews also lost all 5 of their duel matches at the Coggins Hall of Fame duels on Saturday. And then for indoor track, we had the Eastern Alamance Polar Bear meet on December 5th. And in that one, Northwood, some highlights from that one. Northwood's Jordan Wiley finished first in the boys 1,000-meter run. And then Jordan Matthews, Christian Torres finished third in the boys 1,600 and 3,200-meter runs. And then Jordan Matthews finished second in the boys 4x800 relay. And then on the girls' side, for that same meet in the Eastern Alamance Polar Bear meet, Northwood's Julia Hall and Marissa Klaus finished second and fourth, respectively, in the 1,000-meter run. And then in the Stay in Your Lane Invitational Saturday, Chatham Charter, they achieved 14 personal records from their team. So congrats to the Knights there for all those PRs. And then Chatham Charter, their lead boys runner Lucas Smith finished third in the boys 300-meter dash with a time of 36.07 seconds. And then in that same meet, Stay in Your Lane, highlights from Northwoods girls, Sydney Gray finished third in the girls 3,200-meter run. So plenty of indoor track action going on over the weekend and last week.
All right, and before we get into basketball, last thing on the wrestling, Seaforth's going to be over at Carmichael Auditorium this Saturday. Asheebo, you said they are scheduled to do 3 matches. The first one's at when?
Yes, so at 10 a.m., they'll be wrestling against Cary on mat 1, and then they'll get back to it at noon against Cardinal Gibbons on mat 1 as well, and then they'll finish up at 2 o'clock on mat 1 again against Laney. So 3 dual matches for them and Carmichael. Again, some pretty good competition, I imagine.
Yeah, and those folks, if you've never been to Carmichael, it's worth going out there and checking it out. If you have been in Carmichael, it all depends. That's where the women's basketball team for UNC plays. Also, it's where the men used to play before the Dean Smith Center came around. So if you're old school, you can go back and enjoy that. It's a great arena to watch sports in. So that takes care of the track and the wrestling. So that means, hey, let's welcome back in Coach Barry. There he is. All right, gentlemen, we're going to talk high school basketball here in Chatham County. I'm going to go off screen and let these two gentlemen tell you everything they need to do, because I just take pictures, but they know what's going on in the county when it comes to high school basketball. So, Asheebo, kick it off.
Yeah, so just want to run through some of the boys' basketball scores from last week and last night. So starting with last week, Seaforth, they lost a close one to Grace Christian on December 5th, 58-61. But they came back Friday and beat Graham 89-39 in dominant fashion. And then Northwood, they started their season last week, started off on the right foot in conference play. They demolished Northmore 81-30 that Tuesday. And then the following game, they beat Southeast Alamance in a similar way, 74-35. Drake Powell, 29 points against Northmore, 18 points against Southeast. And then Chatham Central, they went undefeated during the week as well. They started with a 69-64 win over Southeast Alamance. And then they followed that with a 58-47 win against Jordan Matthews. And then Jordan Matthews also lost a close one to Cummings, 51-53. And then for the charter schools, Chatham Charter, they lost 2 games last week. First one to URI Charter, 53-58. And then the second one to Southeast Raleigh, 36-65. And then Woods Charter also lost twice, once to Eno River, 51-56. And then to Discovery Charter, 39-58. And then last night, we had Northwood completely kind of dismantled Jordan Matthews in that first meeting of the season, 79-19. Chatham Central, they beat Bartlett Yancey last night at home, 53-42. And then Seaforth lost to Cummings, 64-67. And Woods Charter beat River Mill, 33-32 in a close one. So, yeah. And that brings me into power rankings for the week of December 4th. So, Coach Barry, please let me know what you think about the power rankings this week after I list them out. So, number 1, of course, I got Northwood up there, number 1. Number 2, I got a little different this week. I got Chatham Central in the number 2 spot this week. I got Seaforth at number 3, Jordan Matthews at number 4, and then Chatham Charter at 5 and Woods Charter at 6 to finish it out. So, Coach Barry, give me your thoughts on this week's power rankings.
I agree with you, Asheebo, in this particular case. I think Northwood is far and beyond the number 1 team. They're absolutely destroying every team that they play in conference or out of conference. I would also agree with the Chatham Central idea as well. Right now, they're undefeated. They're 7-0. And as we talked about in some previous talks, we always said Chatham Central is a team that you really got to watch. They have a very, very experienced teams with guards. They're skilled. They can play the up-tempo game. And I think they're going to be a very, outside of Northwood, I think they're going to be a very difficult out. Relative to Seaforth, they have a chance to redeem themselves. They actually play Chatham Central this Friday. If they beat Chatham Central this Friday, then I'm going to go ahead and put Seaforth at the 2nd spot. But as of right now, I would agree with you. I'll put them in the 3rd spot. Jordan Matthews, although they have lost, some games, they are playing the top teams in the conference. They played Northwood, then they had to play Chatham Central, then they played Cummings. So they played 3 of the teams that I think very potentially could be in that 1, 2, 3 type scenario, in the conference. So, I wouldn't hang my hat on that. Learn from those games, try to glean some positives out of it and move forward. Then you have Chatham Charter. Wasn't able to get to see them last week or this week because just scheduling issues, but it seems to be that they have a new crew. They're still trying to figure some things out. They're gelling. They're playing different teams. They're gaining experience. And I think as the year go on, they'll certainly, continue to be better. And obviously, I would put Woods Charter where you actually have them. I did see that they won their last game against Rivermill. It was a close game. They pulled it out at the end. Happy for Coach McNair. But yes, they're definitely on the come up. They're still working some things out. So Asheebo, 100%, I agree with your power rankings this week.
Yeah, and also I like that you mentioned Jordan Matthews and kind of their schedule in the past couple of weeks. So I think a lot of people might be kind of writing them off because they saw they saw Chatham Central and they saw Northwood last night. And I would say I saw them play Chatham Central on Friday, and in that one, at the beginning, they were kind of controlling that game in the first quarter. They had the lead in the first quarter, 17-14, I believe. Brendan Oldham was really active in the paint, finishing strong. He had back-to-back dunks, I think, in the first quarter as well. So they've shown that they can compete with the best of the best in the conference. It's just Chatham Central, like you said, is one of those teams that's dangerous. They have a lot of firepower led by Reed Albright, who also had another 25-point game last night. I mean, he's been doing that night in, night out.
Well, what I believe you are experiencing is this: when the game first starts, players are tight. They're trying to get a feel for each other. It's like this feeling out process. It's like in you box, you go on that first round, they feeling each other out. Nobody's really exposing or really showing anything they really want to do. But as they get more and more comfortable with the tenure and the timing and the speed and athleticism and who can shoot and who can't shoot, then they start to step it up. So I think in the case of the Chatham Central and the Jordan Matthews game, it could have been as simple as, overtime, the team with more players that played together ultimately is going to win over time. We saw something like that last night with the Seaforth girls game. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But ultimately, what tends to play out is if you have a better team, even if you play that team close initially, over the course of the game, the better team tends to pull away from that team that was playing them close initially. And that's what I believe happened when Jordan Matthews actually played Chatham Central.
And then we saw a little bit of that last night. And Gene, you could talk on it too because you were there in the beginning. I mean, Northwood, they jumped on Jordan Matthews pretty quickly. I think they went up 16-3, but in the first quarter. But Jordan Matthews, they settled in. They got some buckets to get in, and they were only down 19-7 at the end of the first. And to me, when I saw that game, really it came down to just missing those easy buckets at the rim, especially Brendan. He didn't have the best shooting night last night. He missed a lot of easy ones at the rim, even some dunks and putbacks that really could have cut the lead in the beginning. But, I think I agree with you. The best team does find a way to pull it out.
Well, and I think like in that particular case as well, what happens is you see a lot of times when a team knows they are playing another team, it's the nerves that get to them sometimes. It's also the fact that they know that the other team has shot blockers and they know that maybe there's somebody's going to contest them. So the comfortability factor that they normally would have against a normal average team isn't there. And because of that, you tend to see these types of behaviors play out where guys miss layups, miss dunks, miss free throws, miss open jump shots, turn the ball over. You'll tend to see those types of things. Not saying that happened to Jordan Matthews, but I have seen many times where a player who normally is very, very, very dependable in certain situations, all of a sudden certain things happen and you think, well, wait a minute, we just had an off night. Well, maybe the other team has something to do with that. When you got a guy like Drake Powell lurking around and Chad Graves lurking around both in excess of 6'6", 6'7", and knowing that they shot blockers and knowing that they have a defensive prowess about them where they take pride in it, you know what? That can make anybody get a little bit tight.
Right. And then also, go ahead, Gene.
Yeah, I was just going to add, actually, Drake seemed a little tight in the first few minutes of the first quarter. There were a couple of baskets he missed there. And then I think Brennan was also in a situation, as what Coach said, where maybe he was trying a little too hard. I know there was one where he was coming in for a shot, and rather than just going for an easy layup, he opted to go for a dunk that bounced out of the basket. So, Coach, how do you figure this kind of stuff affects them the next time they play? Because the next time they'll be playing at Northwood. But again, they've played against each other at least one time before they're going to play again.
I suspect when they get to Northwood, if they're not careful, it could be more of the same, or it can actually get worse, because when you get to Northwood, you're not just dealing with that team, you're dealing with the environment, dealing with those fans. That environment has a real basketball culture feel, but once you go in there, it feels like the lion's den. And if you're not used to dealing with that type of environment, that type of adversity, it could actually have a negative effect on you. But knowing What I know about Coach Wiley, he'll have his team ready to go the best he can. They'll put their best foot forward, but yet and still, that Northwood arena is a monster. Just in how they come out with the introduction music, and they come out with a ferocity and a velocity that, you know what, they're going to really try to take your lunch money and bite your head off, especially in their home gym. So to your point, Gene, if Jordan Matthews is not careful and they don't come with the right mentality and they don't come with that bunker mentality, it could get very, very tricky going into Northwood for the second time. But as long as they go in there and they're ready to go and they're ready to compete and they give the best that they can, regardless of what happens, they can still hold their head high, knowing that even under adverse situations, they gave it their best.
Yeah, and Northwood also just a scary team themselves. And I was talking to Coach Brown last night after the game because I asked him about the kind of struggle shooting to start the game. And I asked him, like, what was the message, get them to settle down. And he was like, there was no message. They kind of just do it themselves. That's it's a team full of really good athletes, really good basketball players, probably about 8 to 9 deep. I feel like they got a lot of guys on the bench that could really start anywhere else other than Northwood. So yeah.
Hey, Asheebo, what were the stats? We were talking about that before we started. How many shots did they miss? And the thing is, out of all the free throws they had, they only missed one last night. So they were pretty consistent once they got over the first few minutes.
Yeah, I think they only missed about 16 shots last night. Most of them were from Drake, but everyone else were getting easy buckets in transition on layups. They switched to a trap and a press in the first quarter that gave Jake. I think Jake had like 8 straight points off of just turnovers. Layups from turnovers coming from those traps in the first quarter. That's how they got up to that big lead. So, yeah, they were really efficient. And then once they settled down and hit from 3, it just came easy for them after that first quarter.
Well, two things going on here. Number one, oftentimes when you go to another team's arena, it's just the surroundings. You're not 100% comfortable. You don't know where the dead spots are on the floor, the rims. One rim might be a little bit crooked. Maybe it's soft. Maybe it's hard. Maybe the backboard, the depth perception is a little bit off. Maybe you had maybe on that bus ride you got cramped up. You just don't feel 100% comfortable. And a lot of times it takes just kind of getting that lather going and just kind of starting to play a little bit, take a charge, run up and down, get winded really quick. And then all of a sudden you start getting to it. But getting back to this whole thing with Northwood, you have to understand that's Northwood's staple. Everybody gets enamored with all of the points that they score. They score 70, 75 points per game, and that's wonderful. I wish my teams can score consistently 70-plus points. The truth of the matter is this with Northwood. Northwood's success is 100% dependent on their defense. Their defense is sensational. They can play really, really good, great man-to-man defense in the half court. If you try to screen, they'll switch from 1 to 5. The other thing that they do really, really well is they run a full court or 3/4 court press. It's particularly the 1-3-1. And what that does is it stresses the offense out a little bit. And ultimately, if they don't get a steal the first time, the second, and the third time, over the course of the game, what tends to happen is the other team starts to make mistakes. They start to turn it over. They get lazy with the passes. They try to throw a skip pass, and it plays right into what Northwood does. They pick it off. They run up the court with Fred Whitaker. You got Drake Powell. You got Cam Fowler. You got Bill Harvey. You got Chad Graves. You got guys coming off bench with Griffin Hobbs. You got these guys that's all built in. They all bought in, and they play like they're all on the string. And ultimately, they end up demolishing the other team because the defense just wears you down over the course of the game. And when the defense wears you down, all of a sudden, then you get the turnovers, the deflections, the bad shots, et cetera, et cetera. Now you look up, you're down by 20, 25 points. And this is what teams are unable to compete with. So hats off to Northwood. If I was a coach, that's exactly the formula that I would use when I play teams. Defense first and let everything else play off of that.
Yeah, and then last thing on the boys before we get into the girls, I just want to ask you, Coach, I won't be able to watch the boys game. I'll be there for the girls game, but that Seaforth and Chatham Central game, we know that's going to be a really good one. I got them, over Seaforth in the power rankings, and Chatham Central, like you said, is undefeated. Seaforth has played some really good teams as well. Like Cummings, they came within 3 of Cummings last night. So I mean, you can't really just take their losses and really put that against them. So what are you feeling from that game, and who do you think will come out on top in that one?
Chatham Central versus the Seaforth Hawks is a pick'em game. You flip a coin, it's 50-50. It's going to come down to what team makes the least mistakes and what team plays the better defense. Both teams are scoring 60, 70 points, but the team that can hold the other team to 40, 35, 40, 45 points, that's the team that's ultimately going to win. It's going to come down to defense. Both of these teams like the running gun. They like to shoot the three. They like to press. They like to get up and down the court. They like that up-tempo style game. Both teams are relatively deep. I spoke to Coach Burke about the Chatham Central Bears, and he tells me he's 8-9 deep with 3-4 guards that can all be point guards. The biggest thing that I think Chatham Central has that they're going to try to use in their favor is the core of their guys have been playing meaningful basketball games over the last 2 to 3 years. That's what he's going to attempt to lean on. On the flip side, when you go look at Seaforth, I think with Seaforth's pressure style play, with the fact that they can platoon in 5 players in and 5 players out, they have some players who are relatively older, seniors. They're going to be ready to compete. They're going to be ready to get at it. The great thing for Seaforth is this. Physically, they match up really, really well against Chatham Central. And I think one of their potential advantages is on the boards. Once a shot is up, if they crash the boards, it's a possibility that they can win that particular battle and get some putback. So even if they have an off night in shooting, they crash the board, get the ball, put it back up, they can see some success there. So who do I think is favorite? The fact that Chatham Central is 7-0, that says something. But on the flip side of it, they haven't played Cummings, they haven't played Northwood, or they haven't played Seaforth. So you really you don't know exactly, how strong that is, how not strong it is. So I think at the end of the day, I think it's a pick'em game. It's 50-50. It's going to come down to who plays the best defense. And ultimately, whoever wins that battle and wins the boards is going to end up winning the ball game. I can't wait to see that game. It's one of those games that I have a star next to as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, the key for Seaforth will really be making Chatham Central, play outside of Reed Albright. And that's kind of what Jordan Matthews tried to do against Chatham Central a little bit with the traps on Reed. But I talked to Coach Burke after that game, and that was one thing he's trying to get his team to really hone in on is learning how to play, get their offense on the same level as if Reed isn't getting double teamed, because teams are going to start double teaming, triple teaming him and trapping him because, like we said, he's scored over 20 in every game this season. So other opponents will know he's a problem going in, and I think if Seaforth can find a way to make Chatham Central use Luke Gaines, some of their other guys outside of Reed, especially those guards we talked about, they'll give them a really good chance of giving Chatham Central their first loss. But yeah, let's get into the girls' side, and I'm just gonna run through the girls' scores from last week and last night. So last week, Seaforth girls, of course, they took that tough loss to Grace Christian, 34-63, but they responded with usual dominant win over Graham, 61-5. And then on Saturday in their Seaforth showcase, they beat Chapel Hill. Some great competition, 46-41. And that one, Gabby White scored a team high 22 points. And then Northwood, they started with a 58-20 win over Northmore. And then they pulled out a close win, 38-35 over Southeast Alamance to end the week. Chatham Central, they lost big to Southeast Alamance, which is a surprise team in the conference this year. They lost 35-70. But they bounced back with a win, a big win over Jordan Matthews on Friday, 55-26. And then after losing to Chatham Central, before losing to Chatham Central, Jordan Matthews trailed Cummings 32-34 in the fourth quarter before the fight broke out. We talked a little bit about that last week. That game got suspended, and there still isn't any word on when that game will resume or if it will be finished. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then Chatham Charter won its second and third consecutive games. They won 59-57 over Uwharrie Charter. And then they followed that with a 49-41 win over Eastern Randolph. So they're also off to a great start. I think they're 8-1 on the season. And Woods Charter lost 33-35 to Eno River, but beat Discovery Charter last week 47-23. And last night, some more scores. Northwood beat Jordan Matthews 58-13. Chatham Central won over Bartlett Yancey 43-35. Seaforth got another big win over Cummings 52-8. And Woods Charter lost to River Mill 38-34. And then for the power rankings for the girls, number 1, still got Seaforth at the top. Got Northwood coming in at number 2. Got Chatham Central staying right there at number 3. Chatham Charter at 4. Jordan Matthews at 5. And Woods Charter at 6. So not too much changing from last week on the girls' side. Coach Barry, what do you see from the girls, and how do you feel about the power rankings this week?
For the most part, I agree with everything you're talking about. I just would like to take a look at Chatham Charter, the girls, just because I think they're interesting. Because I like to see them play Jordan Matthews and maybe even Chatham Central to see how that plays out. And that could alter those spots depending upon what I see. But I clearly like Seaforth. That's the first spot. And as I mentioned the last time we spoke, just because they lost to Grace Christian, do not dismiss the Seaforth Lady Hawks. That team is very for real. The biggest thing that happened after that game was we ended up playing Chapel Hill, which is the 8th ranked team in the state. And we won that game 46-41. So for me, that kind of solidified the legitimacy of the Seaforth Lady Hawks. Number 2 is Northwood. I love that team in terms of how they play with the Glover sisters, Nia Henry, Skylar Adams, Natalia Whitaker, and you have a couple of people coming off the bench with Roberts and Maddie. So I'd like Northwood at that second spot. Then Chatham Central, I had to pick between Chatham Central and Jordan Matthews. I do believe Chatham Central has the edge on them and ultimately will beat them. So I will put them before Jordan Matthews. Then Jordan Matthews will be after them. But the wild card in this whole thing is Chatham Charter, because I need to see more, I need to get a little more data on them and see them play one of those teams for me to kind of figure out where at would I put them in the overall power rankings. And the last one here is definitely Woods. I think Woods is still on the come up. They're still trying to put some things together. I know with first year varsity head coach Carmen Wood, she's working very hard. She has those girls improving, playing better, but yet and still, when you compare them with all the other teams right now, that's where I would put them as of right now.
Yeah, I agree with you that Chatham Charter is interesting because I saw them play early on in the season back in November, and I mean they have a 1-2 punch. Hanah Headen, the freshman, and Mia Brooks down low. So I think if they were to play some of these other schools in Chatham County like Chatham Central or Seaforth, well, I would say more like Chatham Central. I think they definitely could hang with those teams. It's just that we haven't, like you said, we haven't seen them play that level of competition yet. But nevertheless, I still think they're a really good team. It's just that for me, Chatham Central has stepped out, played some tougher competition, and won those games like against Western Harnett. Also, I think who else did they also win against? At 5-2 on the season. I think the Jordan Matthews game really was a good indicator as well because Jordan Matthews has played well at times this year. I mean, we talked about in that Cummings game, they were right there with Cummings last week. Last week. So definitely interesting. I agree with you on Chatham Charter.
Yeah, that's the only one that I would like where I got a little bit of a star next to because that's the one that can move a little bit depending upon how they would fare against Chatham Central and Jordan Matthews. So there's no shade on them. We just need to have more data with them. And once we get the data and it proves that, this team is where we think they are, then obviously we'll move them up the power rankings. But no, I totally agree with that. I do want to mention something going back to Northwood. Even though Northwood is number 2, this is a very legitimate team. They are, they're loaded from top to bottom. They have a great point guard in Natalia Whitaker. I love Skylar Adams. She's a solid 2. And you look at Nia Henry. She's strong, physical, athletic. A lot of their stuff runs through her, particularly off that perimeter. And then you have the bigs down low. They have a nice high-low type situation. In that last game against Southeast Alamance, they pretty much controlled the game. They were up by 10, 11, 12 points. And unfortunately, in the fourth quarter, we went to a slump. We couldn't score. Northwood couldn't score. And Southeast Alamance hit shot after shot after shot after shot after shot. Next thing you know, they're up by 1 point, then 2 points. And we're still struggling to get points. But here's what happened. With about 10 seconds left, 10, 15 seconds left, Northwood had the ball. It was tied up. They bring the ball up. They move ball left, right. It goes to Natalia Whitaker in the corner, and she, boom, splashed a 3-point jump shot to win the game. It was a fantastic finish, and it was something that I was so proud of Northwood, because even though they had faced significant adversity when nothing was going their way, they didn't score the entire fourth quarter except for 2 points. They still found a way at the very end to get it to one of their players, and they hit a shot under very duress situation to win the ball game. I think Northwood playing anybody, including Seaforth, is going to be a tough out. And on any given day, they can beat anybody.
Yeah, I mean, beating that Southeast Alamance team, that's a quality win, because I was talking to Coach Albright last week after they lost to Southeast, and she was saying, that team has a lot of athletes. It's a surprise team, first year playing, but they're coming out the gate swinging, and yeah, to hang with Northwood like that, and Northwood to still come out on top is a really good indicator of what Northwood has on their team. Yeah. But I'm also really interested in this Seaforth and Chatham Central game, and I'm going to that one because I'm just interested to see if Chatham Central can hang with a team like Seaforth. I'm not sure if Chatham Central could win that game. Of course, we know Seaforth has just a lot of firepower with Gabby White, Katie Leonard, Peyton Collins. I mean, they're a really good team. But Chatham Central 5-2, they've looked pretty good from what I've seen this year. I just want to see, can Coach Albright's team with their toughness, because they play with a lot of toughness and physicality, especially down low with Carolee Dotson. Can they find some success with that against a team like Seaforth that likes to run out in transition, get quick buckets, and also are led by, kind of not led by one player, but have a superstar player in Gabby White? Can they hang with them is what I'm interested to see.
There's an old saying, styles make fights. If you have a boxer against a brawler and they both have even skills, the style of the boxer typically is going to have the advantage. You look at Muhammad Ali, you look at Sonny Liston. You look at Mike Tyson, you look at Lennox Lewis. You look at styles make fights. As much as I love Coach Albright and I love the Chatham Central culture and the toughness and the grittiness and how they play and how they're going to fight you tooth and nail, this is a situation where I think styles make fights. I think, if you look at Chatham Central, they have girth, they have size, they're physical. They're gonna die for loose ball. They're gonna fight. They're gonna give you everything that they have. On the Seaforth side, they're going to do the same thing, but they have a little bit more athleticism and they have more skilled players and they have a lot of experience. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Chatham Central also has a couple of injuries. And even if those injuries are, even if they overcame those injuries already, still, even with that, I just think the matchup situation is going to be very, very tricky for Chatham Central. And if I was a bet man, I would tell you I would not bet against the Seaforth Lady Hawks in this particular game. It's extremely tricky for the reasons you just now said. You have Gabby White, you have Katie Leonard, you have Sydney, you have Jossie in the middle, you have the two guards at the top with Peyton and Hanah, you have Mia. She's a great addition. The biggest thing with that group is they really, truly do play as a team. Coach Bird got those guys playing, like one, like a fist. And any team that plays them, they're going to have to match them from a complete team concept, an athletic concept, a speed concept, and also from a physicality concept. And if you can put all those things together, then you can make a game out of it. In the case of Chatham Central, I'm not 100% certain. They can prove me wrong, but I'm not 100% certain that they can match them in all of those areas just indicated.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, we're getting to the part where we've got to wrap it up. We have less than 5 minutes to go. So let's talk about Asheebo. Who's your athlete of the week, and what news articles or sports articles do you have in the Chatham News and Record this week? Go.
Yeah, athlete of the week this week is going to be Chatham Charter's Hanah Headen, the freshman. She had a really good week this week, starting with a win over Charter, where she had 28 points and shot 41% from the floor. And I think in the win over Eastern Randolph on Friday, she put in another 17 and also led the team in scoring. So she's been really impressive as a freshman for a team this year at Chatham Charter. And we talked about them, 8-1. They're taking care of business. They're doing what they're supposed to do in their conference. And I imagine them running through their conference this season. Oh, and then, I'm sorry. Also, the stories coming out in the paper as well. A story on Coach Cameron Eisenhower from Northwoods Track and Field and Cross Country. He'll be departing the school this week after their last meet, the last indoor track meet on Saturday. That'll be his last one as a coach, and he'll be taking an opportunity elsewhere. So congrats to Coach Eisenhower on a successful 5 years at Northwood. And then we got game stories from Chatham Central and Jordan Matthews put into one package with the boys and the girls. And then we also have an interesting story. We have a local man is inducted into the United Pullers of the Carolinas Hall of Fame, Noble Henshaw. Really cool story about a different sport. I don't know too many people have heard of tractor pulling. I certainly did it before I learned about Mr. Henshaw, but he's going to be in their Hall of Fame. This is a little bit on him and his history in the sport, and a little bit more information on the sport for any of those interested, because they do that at the state fair every year as one of their biggest competitions. So congrats to Mr. Henshaw.
All right, let's wrap it up. Gentlemen, where are you all going to be over the next 7 days? Asheebo, you want to start off?
So far, all I know is that I'll be at the Chatham Central and Seaforth girls game on Friday. So I'll be out there keeping stats, and then, of course, I'll talk to the winning coach and players afterwards. I'm not too sure after that, but that's where I'll be Friday.
All right, Coach Berry.
On Friday, it looks like I have a basketball coaching assignment where I may have to go on a scouting trip. Just go check some things out. But next week, I will go to Cherokee, North Carolina, to the Christmas tournament that the Seaforth Lady Hawks will be in. So I'll be there reporting. It's a very good possibility that they're going to end up playing Lake Norman, which is the number 2 ranked team, in the state. So I'm going to check that out next week for sure. But Friday, it looks like I'm going to be on a scouting trip to kind of check some basketball out.
All right. And this Friday, I'll be with Asheebo. Well, actually, I'm going to try to take pictures of all the games at Seaforth. And then Saturday, I am probably going to run over and try to get at least one of the matches that Seaforth's going to have wrestling-wise at Carmichael, because that's a great place to watch things happen. And then we will be back next Wednesday. I don't think we may not be back the week of Christmas, but folks, thank you for watching. We've had consistently over 600 folks watch us. You don't have to watch us live. You can watch us during. It's available both on here on Facebook. It's available on Twitter, and it's also available on YouTube. And actually on Twitter, we get about 80 viewers, and then we've got about 600 viewers that watch on Facebook, and YouTube's more archival, so I don't worry about that, because we may get a couple dozen. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Oh, let me do this. Hold on, Asheebo. We got to let folks know when he's out there. Their account Asheebo R38. So look for him if you're following him, and he's at an event. Coach Berry, what's your website address again?
CoachBerry.com. CoachB as in boy, ERRY.com. CoachBerry.com.
All right, and I post stuff on the Chatham Journal Facebook page, and we put up images as well. And you may see some of my images in the Chatham News and Record. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a fantastic week. Everyone, thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back next Wednesday at noontime.